Welcome to the program. Ghana's year-on-year inflation rate has declined further to 3.3% in February 2026, marking the 14th consecutive monthly drop and the lowest level recorded since the 2021 rebasing of the Consumer Price Index (CPI). According to data released by the Ghana Statistical Service, the CPI for February stood at 264.4, up from 255.9 in February 2025. Well, this represents a 3.3% increase in the general price level over the 12-month period. On a month-on-month basis, inflation was 0.8% in February 2026, indicating that prices rose marginally between January and February this year. The February inflation rate represents a 0.5% drop from the 3.8% recorded in January 2026 and a sharp 19.8% decline from the 23.1% recorded in February 2025.
Has declined to 3.3% in February 2026, from 3.8% in January 2026 and 23.1% a year earlier. 2. Food inflation has eased significantly to 2.4% from 3.9% in January 2026 and 28.1% a year earlier. 3. Goods inflation has slowed to 3.2% from 3.7% in January 2026 and 22.6% a year earlier. 4. Imported inflation has fallen sharply to 0.6% from 2% in January 2026 and 18.5% a year earlier. 5. Regional disparities remain. Northeast region recorded the highest inflation rates of 8.9% in February 2026, while Savannah had the lowest inflation rates at negative 5.6%. And finally, but not the least, inflation today is lower, is narrower, and is more stable compared to a year earlier.
Dr. Stephen Amoah is a former Deputy Finance Minister and is joining me this afternoon for more on this. Grateful for your time this afternoon, Dr. Amoah. What do you make of the latest inflationary figures?
Thank you very much. Can you repeat your question?
Inflation is down to 3.3%. What do you make of the latest figures?
Thank you very much for this opportunity. In the first place, we need to first say that, of course, to me, anything that reduces the prices of goods and services is a welcoming news, provided other factors are seen to behave in the same way that will offer us the needed utility or satisfaction. And I'm sure we should also have to look at what is happening when it comes to the NPR rate, because the most important thing is how we can sustain this. If you look at the disinflation that we are having, of course, the present government's tight fiscal policy, probably as a result of, in my opinion, two main things: the government not spending, and the government also trying to comply with the tight monetary policy rules, or being actually put on us as a country by the IMF. If you look at the monetary policy and the tight policy rate, talking about the tight monetary policy rate and the fiscal consolidation program, they have helped a lot. And if you look at the season in which we are in terms of food prices, I've traveled from Kumasi to Accra, you realize that, honestly speaking, is it a bunch of plantain, or is it the whole thing that used to actually cost me like 100 Ghana cedis? Yesterday I got one at 50 cedis. So I'm sure it's a good news. The only problem that I have is whether indeed, in terms of borrowing, private sector is still enjoying the minimum lending rate they are supposed to, because it's still run between 17% and 25% when it comes to the households and the businesses. So we need to sit down and analyze why the needed correlation among these primary macro indicators that will let us know that indeed things are running in a way that we can be sure of resilience, we can be sure of redistribution in terms of sector benefit and stakeholder benefit. We need to look at that. But apart from that, I can say it's a good news. I mean, we went as high as 54.1%. Remember when the COVID issue came up?
Right.
And then by 2020, I think the last election, before the last election, last quarter, 2024, we came down to about 22.9. And now we are down to single digit and very, very down, which is very good. And if you look at the policy rate, recently it has been reduced to about 11 point something. It was somewhere around 18. And then from that is the March, and then it came down to 15 point something. That is not the December 18 ending of last year. And then somewhere January it came to about, I think that was 18% thereabout, or 15, sorry, and now it's about 11 point something. And if you look at this as a reference point for the banks, even if you are supposed to add 5%, it should be around 15%. But some of the banks are still not complying. So we need to also manage the lag effect between some of these figures we are enjoying now, and then how other variables will also have to quickly respond to them so that Ghanaians can practically benefit from that, and how we can sustain it. Because getting single digit is not the first time, but of course we come very low this time. And also post IMF policy tightening of our expenditures and other things, or consolidation, whether as a country we will have that ability or capacity to kind of maintain this whole economic figures and make sure that we build the needed resilience as a sovereignty, and also build the needed dependency and make sure that we can continue to sustain this and even bring lending rate to single digit. Once you're able to do that, I'm sure we'll have a future as a country. But for now, I would say that it's a good thing. We're enjoying a good primary macro indicator. We're enjoying good primary macro indicators, which are signs of very strong foundation being built or established now. How to sustain it and how it can also reflect in other areas are my concerns now. But for now, I would say that yes, they are good news.
You've been there before. You've been a former deputy finance minister before. Looking at how it is going, how do we sustain it so that we make sure that we keep inflation as low as possible?
In the first place, I think this conversation should have been given adequate time, ample time to discuss, because it's a very good question you ask, because it should be a whole program. In the first place, I think as a country, we need to prioritize our spending. We need to look at areas where our expenditure will have strong correlation with our GDP growth. We don't have to be spending in areas that do not impact our GDP growth. And when we want to cut down expenditure, we need to also understand the fact that we just don't wake up and cut expenditure. There are expenditure items that do not have any strong correlation with our growth or social impact or satisfaction. We need to be careful with that. And two, we need to also deal with most of the primary economic anomalies. For instance, governments, all governments, most of the time borrow on our domestic market at a higher rate than even the private sector. Technically, it's very, very, very bad. And also making sure that our SME sector, which forms about 90% of our market, is properly established in terms of making sure that, yes, how can we actually make good use of our SME sector as the strength of our economy, and make sure that they are strong enough to withstand all turbulences or any turbulent period. Because most of the SMEs, honestly speaking, they don't have the requisite funds. They also depend on importations. Even our farmers, you look at them, they don't even have the needed mechanized systems and the tools they need. So it's all depending on weather. So we need to, as a country, deal with one government policies when it comes to spending, our strategy and tactics in dealing with the consolidation of our fiscal space, we have never had it right. I'm being honest with you. Two, even the weaknesses of the institutions, go and check how they spend. So it puts this kind of unsustainable debt, whatever, of our country on the government. And we tend to borrow and we tend to go into areas that we have problems with our fiscal space and we run into deficit, and it has impact on most of the things we do. Exchange rate is also one. I mean, we import almost everything. What can we do? At least agri sector, government should, redefine its corporate focus, especially when it comes to agri, so that the entire value chain of anything from agri sector will not import to them. Once we're able to build these foundations, some of these primary macro indicators, we can really maintain and sustain them. Other than that, we'll still go back. Because as I'm talking to you, we'll still import most of the things we use in our country. That's one. Two, I've seen recently that there's also this good news you haven't checked. Now, I went to the bank to check, and then the TV rate is now below the private sector, comparative private sector security or asset rates. And I said, wow. No, that was the work I did. It was part of my PhD work. It's one of the major technical areas we don't look at, where government is crowding out private sector, borrowing at a higher rate than the private sector. It distorts some of these things, and we'll go back, and inflation will come up again. So we need to look at fundamentally what we have to do. And one bad area of all governments is our research. We have very weak research and development institutions. We don't finance them very well. We don't do all these things. If you look at, I think, Act 1056, it talks about fund that has to go to research areas, about 0.5% of our revenue. We don't comply with all these things. So I think we don't have to go back again. We should be happy with what we have. But there are fundamental, like a foundation of a building. We need to go down there, fix all these things so that we can be very resilient and very strong. Once we do that, we can keep this and consolidate and maintain this position. And going forward will help us as a country.
Dr. Stephen Amoah, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. He's a former Deputy Finance Minister. Let's just stay on this subject and bring in Williams Prepra, who is an Associate Professor at Andrews University in the United States. Professor Prepra, thank you for your time this afternoon. Not long ago, we were talking about the inflation figures for the first month of the year, January. Now, we have the February inflation figures in, and it's not looking much different from what we saw the previous month. What do you make of it?
Good afternoon to you, and good afternoon to your viewers. We've seen a slight drop in inflation rate. What it means is that the rate at which prices increases in based on an index, which is a CPI, seems that yes, there is no growth. So let me quote the government statistician. He used three main words. He says this rate is lower than before, slower than we expected, and then also stable. These were the three words he used. I would like to agree with him that yes, indeed, this is what is really happening in Ghana. What probably has been the discussion is that when do we see this reflecting in, as you were discussing with the former deputy minister, when do we see this happening, having an impact on our interest rate? So in economics and finance, there is something we call time lag. It takes time for metrics like this to reflect generally in prices, or also in interest rates. So that's what we term as the recognition time lag, decision time lag, implementation time lag, and impacts time lag.
Right.
So the Bank of Ghana meets every quarter. So until they meet again, it will take some time for us to see that it's being reflected. However, you will see that the January inflation rate has already been reflected in the interest rate. That's they call it the Ghana reference rate. If you notice, it's dropped up to around 11%, which was roughly around 15%. And when it moved to 3.8, it's come down. So anticipation is that in the next quarter, somewhere in March, where the central bank will meet again, we should expect interest rates to drop.
Right.
So in terms of, if you do the math based on the interest rate we have, Ghana may be among the countries with one of the highest rates in terms of real interest rate. That is normally if you have your nominal interest rate, you subtract your inflation, your CPI or your inflation rate. Our figure is very high. So roughly the central bank's monetary policy rate, we know, if you take our 3.3 from it, we're still very high. This is where the problem is. And then you must also see that there is also some disconnection. Okay, let me call it an arbitrage situation between the TB rate, which is hovering 6%, 7%, and then the monetary policy rate, which is also a little bit different. So we see a mismatch, and all these with time must have to be aligned.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the central bank is looking at this, knowing how inflation is behaving. You must find a way to align it. So this may force central bank in the next NPR meeting, MPC meeting, to also come and reduce interest rate.
Ordinarily, interest rates and inflation should, go hand in hand, as you've rightly mentioned. It's been 14 consecutive months since we've seen repeated declines in the inflation rate. Of course, sometimes also we've been seeing the monetary policy rate being capped from time to time. But why do you think within those 14 months, there's never been a time where the interest rates and the inflation rate are even anywhere closer?
So we remember we went as high with inflation rate to 54%. So it's like you are driving, and we were driving very fast above the speed limit, which was 8%. Our band is 8 plus 2% minus plus or 2%.
Right.
And then the country was moving, prices were moving at a pace, went as high as 54%. You cannot all of a sudden slow down. So that was the gap. And the government uses monetary policy tool and then to its agricultural strategies to make sure that the prices are reversed into what we are seeing, which we call the disinflation. So from the agricultural sector, if you look at the food basket, which is about 42% in our CPI index, you've seen that gradually we have done very well. God has been also gracious to us in terms of weather, and food has been in a sort of abundance within Ghana. So that is why our food basket has come down. Then the government also, through its policies, monetary policies, have been able to done very well with making sure that, yes, exchange rate is addressed, and this has have an impact on our imports. So these two factors are the main drivers that has really worked. The mopping up with excess liquidity in the system, government was very cautious and made sure that they were not going to borrow too much. So that's why we see also not too much money is put into the system to still increase the inflation rate. So these three factors are the major reasons why within the 14 months, we see that kind of disparity. It is going to take a little bit while where all these rates, all these macro indicators will have to align and come to the normal that we know in economics and finance. As it is, the rates are a little bit not as we know what we've been taught in what we teach in classroom. We see that kind of disparity, and that is a major concern. But let's give ourselves, I'm sure with time, it's going to be aligned. So that's why I started by talking about the time lag.
Right.
The time lag is very, very important. So those who've done econometrics, anytime you are doing your model and simulation, you factor in the time lag when the policy will have an impact. So with time, we may see that kind of alignment happening.
Right. Time has taught us that our economy is susceptible to external shocks. And as we speak right now, there's an ongoing exchange of missiles in the Middle East. Do you think that going forward, we should do something to ensure that we are not much affected by these external shocks? And could they even have any impact as we speak right now?
So yes, no one can predict what will happen in the future. And this external factors in terms of war going on between US, Iraq, Israel, and other in the Middle East, yes, it's going to have an impact on us. So we all know the commodity price, oil, is really going to affect all of us. Even though if we don't buy from that region, the way the prices are determined is going to have an impact on us. What can we do as a country to be able to the reason why we have we have models looking at the future, what is going to happen is that we have to look at our models very well. This is the time that our government must look at what can we control, what can we not control. We focus on the item that we can control, we minimize it, which is going to absorb any major effects that may come through, may pass through from these external factors. So let's focus on the systematic risks, the unsystematic risks. Let me put it that way. The one that we can control, the systematic risks, which is the one that really affects all of us, it becomes very difficult to handle. But if you are able to control those that you have your hands on, your agricultural sector, your industries within your own purview, your taxes, your revenue collection, all of that. Then, if there are anything that is happening in the external world, however the impact, because you're able to reduce your unsystematic risks, which is the one that you can diversify, the one that you can control, is going to be able to absorb the risks that may come through from external, that one that you cannot control. So this will be my advice. So probably government, focus on what you are doing, and then if you are saying your target is to reduce expenditure by a certain percentage, you must do more and cut expenditure more, because you don't know how this conflict is going to last and how it's going to really affect the Ghanaian sector. And then also our agricultural sector, also looking out for alternative sources of maybe oil, where we are going to get all of this thing coming in. This will be a major way for the government to look at.
Right. Professor Pepper, don't go yet. I've also been joined on Zoom by Kojo Opon Nkrumah. He's the minority spokesperson on the economy and also the ranking member on the Economy and Development Committee in Parliament. Kojo, grateful for your time this afternoon. The inflation figures for February is out, and we're hearing that the inflation for the month of February is now 3.3%. The minority has always maintained that the inflation that we're witnessing is really not the true reflection of what people are feeling in their pockets. Has your position changed on that? Hello, Kojo. Kindly unmute your microphone so we can hear you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah, good afternoon to you and your viewers. I think we should be clear on what the minority's position has been. The minority's position has been that it is important for the government to disclose the method that it is using. Inflation just doesn't drop because it has dropped. Inflation is reducing because of some interventions that government is introducing. So it's important for government to be candid, because every one of those methods comes at a cost. And so, for example, one of the predominant methods this government has been using is heavy sterilization, very heavy sterilization. We told you earlier that in the year 2025 alone, they sterilized about 60 or 62 billion Ghana cedis. That 62 billion Ghana cedis that they mopped up through their open market operations from the Ghanaian economy is money that would have been available to stimulate demand. And when they mopped it out of the economy, that money was no longer available to stimulate demand. it has a way of controlling the demand pull side of inflation. Meanwhile, the cost push side, which is for me the most critical side, is not being dealt with. So tariffs are going up, cost of production is going up, but the Bank of Ghana is now coming in to do heavy sterilization. The cost of it is that, one, you are beginning to get signs from the Bank of Ghana that their open market operations cost for 2025 is so huge on their books. So you will notice, if you are paying attention, that they've started a public relations exercise to prepare people's minds for their accounts, which are about to be published. And it's because we suspect that the open market operations costs, which is effectively the tool they've used for sterilization, is gone through the roof. It comes at a cost there. The other cost is the opportunity cost of this liquidity being available to even stimulate productivity in the Ghanaian economy. So we have not said that the figures they are publishing are false. What we have said is that the methods need to be disclosed and interrogated. The other point we need to interrogate is, what is the inflation target for Ghana? 8 plus or minus 2. Why? Because the lower band of 6 is the minimum that is required for the necessary productive activity in the economy for growth and for jobs to be created. So when you use methods that now take us down, and the method they are using, I dare say they can even get to 0. When you use some of these methods, what are you actually doing to real sector productivity and job creation? The lower band is 6, the higher band is 10. So if the methods you are using are now taking you to 3.3, don't just jubilate over 3.3. Ask yourself, what does it mean for our inflation target? And has all the construct about the inflation target now been thrown out of the window, especially talking about the lower band, which is necessary for productivity and jobs? And then finally, I always say that look out for the lived experiences of the people. So when the government says inflation now is 3.8 or today 3.3, don't just sit in the studios and take it. Get out there into the market and find out from people whether that is their lived experience, or whether the rate at which the cost of the basket of goods they are using is rising is actually 3.3 year on year, or whether they are experiencing something different, something higher from that. Those have been our comments, and we stand by those comments, these 3 issues.
Does that then mean that if these sterilizations you talk about government using, if it is stopped, does it mean that we could be seeing different figures now?
I mean, in economics, whatever method that you use to achieve a particular end, usually if you reverse it and the substantive issues have not changed, you will get a reversal of the scenario you have created. So, like I said, inflation has 2 sides. There's a cost push side of inflation. The factors of production and the cost at which they come has a way of driving up inflation if the prices are increasing. And then there's the demand pull, when people have liquidity and they are able to demand. When there's a lot of liquidity in the economy making demands and it's not supported by production to bring it into equilibrium, the demand alone will now begin to push prices up. I submit respectfully that when you are not doing much about the cost push side, that is when the Bank of Ghana will come in to do heavy sterilization to suck out the money, so that there's very little money for people to demand. And so today, when you go out there into the market, people will tell you that they hear inflation is at 3.8 or 3.3, but there's not much money in the market to, stimulate. Their products are still on the market because people don't have, purchasing power to be able to buy those items that are there on the market. What that means is that when you stop that high levels of sterilization, you could have the scenario reversing, and that you have not dealt with the real fundamental issue, which for me is trying to deal with the cost push side, the factors of production and the cost of those factors of production. Producers will tell you that electricity bills alone currently are hovering between 24, some say 28% increase, and that is therefore increasing their cost of production. The question we should be asking ourselves is, has anything been done to arrest or contain it? Or is it a scenario where money is taken out of the economy so that even if the real cost is X, because people cannot afford, the producers are not necessarily increasing, or sometimes are reducing their prices just to get rid of their stock and give up their margins even? Those are some of the critical questions that we should be asking. We have said the same, for example, about what the government has been doing on the monetary policy side, on the currency. if you are doing heavy market intervention, last year alone about 10 billion, and we think this year they are now beginning to run a bit short of, Forex to intervene. That's why you are seeing things like heavy disposal of our gold reserves into Forex, which they say is just to diversify the portfolio. But we have very strong suspicions that they are using a bit of that Forex to intervene. If you are having to use this method, and it's not the regular demand and supply for Forex that is actually moderating the currency. The question to ask is, so when the central bank no longer has these reserves to intervene in the market, will your currency stay where it is now? We admit that intervention occasionally, when there's a shock in the market, is part of the toolkit. But when that becomes your regular, everybody should be asking questions. What happens when we no longer have that? And multiple things will happen. When gold prices are no longer where they are, you remember that gold is having a major uptick because of the uncertainties around the world. So gold has become a safe haven investment class. If things normalize and you don't have that and gold prices are back at where they are, would you still be able to use the same strategy? If, for example, you are not able to mobilize the kind of volumes of gold that you need to do this trading and intervention into the market, because now more attention is being paid to traceability of gold. Would you be able to do this? So there's a choice you have to make. Are you going to deal with the fundamental issues, or you're going to use some of these interventions that, yes, they are part of the toolkit, but have questions about their sustainability? The jury is out, and we are continuously encouraging government to deal with more of the methods that are sustainable.
Right. You've also called on the Ghana Statistical Service to come clear on the methods they use in arriving at these figures. What method would you rather they used?
Well, we haven't said there's another method. What we said was that when the government statistician appears before us in Parliament, we will be inquiring into, for example, the basket of goods that they are using. We're looking to have some more examination of the base year and examine whether today's consumption patterns align very much with that same basket that they are using. Those are some of the questions that we'll be having for the statistician when he appears before us. But we have maintained that keep an eye on your inflation target, H plus or minus 2. What does this mean for that? Are you going to revise your inflation target, or are you admitting that now you are actually going below the minimum required for productivity and jobs? Number 2, be honest about the methods so that the cost of those methods and the opportunity cost, as well as the environmental costs in some of the instances, can be well examined. And then number 3, compare these headline numbers to the lived experiences of people out there and make a determination whether or not it's sustainable.
Right, Kojo Ponkroma, I want you to hold on for me and go to Dr. George Domfe, who is a development economist there. I also have Williams Prepra, who is an associate professor at Andrews University in the United States. Dr. Domfe, welcome to the program. Let me pick your initial reaction to the latest inflationary figures of 3.3% for February.
Yeah, thank you very much, my brother, for having me. And let me say very good afternoon to our cherished viewers and Honorable and my other co-panelists. Yes, I think I will continue from where Honorable Ponkroma landed. I am a bit skeptical when I see the figures. And the formula for calculating inflation is just a proportionate change of the consumer price index. And so if you want to look at the formula, you must have to look at the consumer price index. What goes into the consumer price index? Number 1, the consumer price index is nothing but Ghana Statistical Service would look into the economy, identify. Today we have about 400 commodity items. So they look at all these 400, almost about 400. And all these items, each of them has a weight. When we talk about the weight is the level of patronage. And this weight is predetermined. And so before we enter the year, Ghana Statistical Service has done market survey, and they have identified the commodities that are highly patronized, and for which reason they are able to pinpoint what weight should go to what particular commodity. And so when they are calculating the CPI for a particular month, they multiply the weight of that commodity by the price change. And so last month, what was the price change compared to this month? If they are doing a month on month, and if it is year on year, they look at this, so February 2026 compared to February 2025. You know, and so that's what they do. And so there are two ways where Ghana Statistical Service can get the inflation wrong. Number one, if the weight is not where, does not align with the level of patronage of goods and services by Ghanaian citizens, it will be a problem. And so the way and manner inflation has been dropping consistently vis-a-vis the experiences in the market, I think either they have to look at the weight, or again, the people they have on the field who have been collecting the data on price changes, they must also look at that very well, because if you go, we also do research, we do market survey, we've been talking to Ghanaian consumers, and if you look at the experiences, of course, we also buy, we also sell.
Right.
Especially today, if you look at the production, there's PPI, producer, that one has also gone down.
Price index.
But electricity is going up every month. Water is going up. And so if producer price index is going down, of course, we have seen cost of credit coming down. That is true. But the other components of production is going up.
Are you then disputing?
Hello.
Are you then disputing the figures?
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll come to you, gentlemen. Professor Pipra.
Let me just one. I'm sure Dr. Dunfe is aware that your CPI is an index. And we all understand what index is. Some prices will go up, some prices will come down, and is the benchmark, is the average that you are taking. So let's admit that indeed electricity is going up, water is going up, but there are other commodities that have also gone down. Some have even gone to negative.
Right.
So when you put that one in an index, it will pull all the index to this level we are seeing. We must also be careful with doubting Ghana Statistical Service. Remember, the data they are giving is what the IMF, the World Bank are all using. If you start to throw doubt in your numbers, it affects all your policy directions.
Right.
So I'm sure Dr. Dunfe has.
Right.
Please, can I come in?
Dr. Dunfe, please. I'll give you some time.
This is not the time. This is not the time to run down Ghana's. I don't work there. But let's admit, the same model they use they have been using for the past 10 years. They have been consistent. Unless we are saying that there is something really, really wrong. Is it because there is a change in the leadership, and you feel that people are giving us wrong numbers for us to make decisions? Let's accept this is the number they have given to us. Until probably they go to Parliament, and then the Parliament, as Koju has said, they look at the data and they can tell us that there's a major deviation of how it has been done. And let's admit, this reduction in inflation rate did not start now. It started from when we went to IMF, from 54 started coming down to 20 something. So do we doubt those numbers?
Please.
So these are my
direction.
My things that I think that we must watch very carefully.
Right.
Run down Ghana Statistical Service.
Okay, right. I was also about to.
Let me. Can I respond to Professor?
Yes,
Pipra,
respectfully,
please?
you can respond.
Yeah, Prof. I don't like how you started it, because when I started talking about it, I did say we have over 400 commodities. I didn't talk about only things that are experiencing price, reduction. I was talking about how we calculate CPI, that it is a linear summation of each commodity's weight multiplied by the price change. And I'm saying that I'm as a Ghanaian, I also go to the market. People talk a lot. I have been working with Ghana Statistical Service. I know how they calculate the CPI. Okay, my problem with the current one is that the rate at which it is going down. Of course, this is not the first time we are seeing inflation around 3.1. Indeed, May 1985, we have 1.14. We've seen all these things before. But my experience as a consumer in the market makes me, a lot of things have gone up. School fees, a lot of things. And so the rate at which we are experiencing the reduction, and if you look at the inflation figures, you will see that almost at every last quarter of the year, inflation will go up a little bit or stagnate. Last year, during the last 3 months, we saw it coming down so fast. That is my concern.
But Dr. Dunfer, that doesn't...
Please can I land?
That doesn't... Okay, you land.
I talked about the level of patronage that they used to determine the weighting. And so don't say that has been the last 10 years, the weighting is still what they are using. No, they change it all the time. And once you get the weighting wrong, that tries to capture the level of patronage, definitely there will be something wrong with the entire CPI. And once your entire CPI is wrong, the final figure will be wrong. And last month, let's even listen to what happened. Non-food, weighted average non-food last month was 3.9. Weighted food was 3.9. An average of 3.9 and 3.9 is not supposed to be 3.8. But they said, 3.8. That was, I never understood it. Anytime you are determining average should always be, the figure for an average should be between the highest and the lowest. Average can never fall outside, the range.
Dr. Dunfer, are you then, if I can come in at this point, Dr. Dunfer, if I can come in at this point.
If you are concerned to me, I hardly would criticize what people have done.
Respectfully, if I may, Dr. Dunfer, I've given you enough time. If I can come in this time, are you then seeking to suggest that you doubt the figures put out by the Ghana Statistical Service?
I do. They must have to check, and that's what I've said, that they have to check the weighting, the weight. They have to check the weighting. If you doubt the figures, then may I ask you, for example, the month of February 2026, we're seeing 3.3% of inflation. According to your figures, how much do you think our inflation should have been by now? That's the question I can answer.
It will be difficult for him.
I don't even have
because he hasn't gone to the market to gather that. I'm not sure you can say that.
Appreciation. I do know how it is done, how CPI is calculated, how PPI is calculated. I have better appreciation about the concept, and that is why I'm questioning what is happening. I doubt it. I think something somewhere is not adding up.
Can I come in?
Yes. Not adding up.
Yes, Kojo, you can come in. But before you come in, though, let me ask you quickly. Do you also doubt it?
Oh, you've asked me already, and I've told you that we have never been ones to go out there to say we doubt the figures.
Okay.
It's interesting hearing from, the academics who are now debating the veracity of the figures. And I take particular interest, for example, in one of the points that Dr. Dunfer has made, that if non-food is 3.9 and food is 3.9, when you strike an average, it should be 3.9. It shouldn't be 3.8. That's a statistical matter. Again, I take interest in something that JoyNews did a few days ago that suggested that the president's claim that the Ghana Statistical Service has reported that 1 million jobs have been, or 1 million people have found jobs in the first 9 months of last year is false. I don't think the president is the one who was peddling the falsehood, because I've been on a program on JoyNews where another official of finance ministry has relied on that same statistical service data of 1 million jobs. And so if, for example, Dr. Dunfer is saying that there needs to be an open conversation about the methods they are using and the veracity of those methods, I don't think it should be dismissed or treated as, an attempt to disparage the statistical service. In an academic peer review environment, these things are normal. But for me, as a ranking member of the economy committee, I make the point that what we should now examine are the implications of this for our inflation targeting regime and the targets we have. We should encourage government, push government to be honest about the methods. They've been denying, and now if you look at page 284 of the 2026 budget, you will find that the Bank of Ghana reports that they sterilized about 62 billion Ghana cedis. And I've told you that sterilization is not at zero cost. And that sterilization will show up in the 2025 accounts of the Bank of Ghana. And already, you've seen the Bank of Ghana issuing PR materials trying to soften the grounds about their OMO costs. That should give you an indication that the methods we are telling you they are using are not, figments of our imagination. And it should encourage everybody to ask them to explain some more. And then you come to the issue of the lived experiences, which Dr. Domfe is speaking to. But two things that I think going forward we should also look out for. Utility tariffs are supposed to benefit from, among other things, this reduction in exchange rates. Are they being translated into the utility tariffs that have come and are coming? Or are we beginning to see a sharp dichotomy? And is there an explanation for this dichotomy? That if a good chunk of some of the things that are happening in the utility space, particularly for electricity, is the IPP's production cost, and the exchange rate has, appreciated by about 40%, how come you are not seeing it translate into at least a moderation of a hike in utility tariffs? I think those are some of the areas that going forward we should be interrogating, not simply a matter of whether the numbers are true or not, because there are other indicators in the marketplace that can then give you a sense of what is really going on. I also take interest in Prof's comment earlier that the inflation reduction exercise did not start now, and that it started when it began the decline from about 54%. You will recall, and here I'm speaking politically, you will recall that anytime we have made the point that the inflation reduction program did not start with this administration, it started as part of our PCPEG, our post-COVID program for economic recovery, right, which was then funded by the International Monetary Fund. Our colleagues in the NDC say no, inflation was 54%, and they leave it at that. But they always try to hide that fact. I'm happy Prof has alluded to the fact that no, that was when you began to observe a reduction in inflation, except to say, Prof, that the major method at that time was tight monetary policy, not sterilization. And now, even though using that particular program, we were supposed to have inflation average 11% for 2025, now heavy sterilization is being introduced. We need to get to the point where we answer the question whether or not this is the method that is being used and the cost and implications of this method. We can't just run away from it and say inflation has come down to 3.3 simpliciter. We need to get into these conversations because it's just kicking the can down the road. When we started raising, concerns about the heavy market intervention that the central bank was doing and its potential implications, people didn't want to pay attention. Now, Cocoa Board has lost about 40% of every dollar that they get in CD terms. They've lost about 40% of it because of this heavy market intervention. It comes at a cost. This heavy market intervention comes at environmental cost to people, comes at a huge health cost to our population. And now we are even worried it comes at a cost to our reserve. So let's not just leave it as they say it's 3.3. Do you believe it or not? No. Let's also now delve into things like the methods that are being used, the cost, the opportunity cost, and the sustainability of these methods. That's been the position of the Minority Caucus. But once again, we will receive the government statistician and interrogate his data some more.
Right, gentlemen.
Can I just give me to address? I think so. I'm sure we all know that in 2027, Ghana Statistical Service, based on their official, that would be the era they have to do the rebasing of the data. So, Mr. Ponkuma, when you meet them, kindly ask them about their preparation, whether they have the funding to be able to do this in 2027. They do this in every 10-year interval. Yes, and this will really help us to understand the food basket, the weight, and all of that. Then that alignment, as we are talking, should come in. And
Absolutely.
then, I understand you when you talk about sterilization, but you put an adjective in front and say heavy sterilization for it to mean that it is negative.
No, I haven't meant, and please let me clarify, I haven't meant as compared to the trends. And then also now looking at the costs.
Yeah, the way you normally say it, remember, during your time, I'm saying your time, the MPP time, you use the monetary policy rate, and it also came with a cost.
Yes.
And the rate started coming coming down, but its rate of coming down was not so radical, fast as we wanted it. Mm-hmm. But this new government, they have used an approach that is so, let me put it, radical. That the one that you are talking about, the cellularization. Yes, it's a more radical approach. And because they wanted within a short period of time to address the inflation issue and exchange rate. And I agree with you that, yes, it also has a cost. But if you look at the way they position themselves, they want an aggressive way of driving down inflation. I may advise that, yes, inflation has gone below our threshold. So they must slow down on that aggression. I agree with you when we say the way they are doing it. I'm sure as you meet your colleagues, they are listening to you. They may have to slow down. If not, very soon, we will be going into deflation. That is where we are almost getting there. And deflation, we don't want it. Last month, Ghana Statistical reported that some regions has already started experiencing deflation, and which we don't want. Right. So we must find a way to address all these concerns, and I'm sure it will really help our economy. But
very quickly, I agree with Prof. Except to say that it starts with the government being honest and admitting that, yes, what we are doing is doing sterilization. I qualify it as very heavy sterilization. If the government doesn't bring candor to its economic policy options, it leaves you in this basket where you are guessing what they are doing. We shouldn't be in that space. We should have that clarity. We will tell you the method we're using, monetary policy rate. Yes, there's a cost to it. There's an opportunity cost to it. Put that on one side. Be honest about your sterilization, and let's put the cost and the opportunity cost on the other side. And now the people have information to make a decision.
Well, speaking of deflation, though, Professor Williams-Pepper, we still witnessed some regions recording deflations, especially in northern Ghana. We have the likes of Savannah region, Upper East region, and the OT region as well. That's not good for the economy, is it?
It's not good. The impact is that it's going to, very soon, you will see that there's another measure where they measure the living standard, the one Kojo is talking about. You see that those regions reporting deflation is going to be very worse. And those people are now going to move to other regions that are seeing a little bit of inflation. And this is what we need to address and have that kind of balance. We should not be prepared to see deflation in Ghana. It is not good for our economy. So many things will happen. So sector ministers may see what is happening in those regions. They need to go there and put more, make sure that development is gone there. Money is pushed into that economy to make sure that we see a little bit of inflation. Inflation is good, but excessive is what we don't want.
Dr. Domfe, do you agree?
Yeah, I think I agree with them. You see, when we are talking about the inflation, it has two sides. The other one, the one who is going to consume, the consumers, we always want it to be very low. But the producers, if at all time they have to produce and sell at very low prices, they can break even, yet alone to, raking enough to get, profit. And when that happens, it affects or it discourages productivity. People, I don't enter into business and then at the end of the day, there's nothing to show for it. And so when that happens, many producers will stop production. If what is happening is true, it means that the producers are going to suffer. For the consumers, yes, we want it to be like that. Yeah, but the producers are going to suffer. And once they stop producing, at the end of the day, when we go to the market, there will be nothing to buy. And there will be no economic activity. Unemployment rate will go up. And so there's always a need to create the balance. If what is happening is real, there is a need to create the balance. We shouldn't always think that once inflation goes down, then everything is well. No, it doesn't work that way. There's that's what Honorable Oponkoma was trying to talk about. There's a band, the lowest and the maximum, and so we have to be working, within that band. And we started this exercise since 2003 when we went inflation targeting. So I'm wondering what has become the situation. If indeed what is happening is true, why we are now forcing ourselves to push us down, the bottom of the band. And that is not good enough. It doesn't encourage production, and it doesn't also encourage job creation.
Right. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Dr. George Domfa is a development economist. Kujo Opon Nkrumah is the ranking member on the Economy and Development Committee in Parliament. Williams Pepra is an associate professor at Andrews University in the United States. And some economists are also pushing back against President John Mahama's assertion in his 2026 State of the Nation address that Ghana's economy has decisively rebounded. They argue that while headline macroeconomic indicators may suggest stabilization, easing inflation, relative currency stability, and fiscal consolidation, the so-called recovery remains largely statistical and not structural. In their view, the gains reflected in GDP growth projections and primary balance improvements have yet to translate into tangible welfare gains for households and small businesses. Put simply, the macro story may be improving, but the microeconomic reality on the streets tells a different story. High cost of living, constrained disposable incomes, and persistent unemployment pressures. And this afternoon, we've been speaking to some economists on what they make of President John Mahama's State of the Nation address. And joining me in studio right now is Dr. Kwesi Nyame Befi. He's a lecturer and economist at GIMPA. Doc, grateful for your time this afternoon. You're an economist, so you can speak on a wide range of issues. Now we're having 3.3 inflation in the month of February. What do you make of that?
I think to begin with, thanks for having me, and greetings to all your listeners. Indeed, this morning I actually saw some publications from the Ghana Statistical Service saying that inflation has dropped further, I think from 3.8% to 3.3%. But I think that what we should actually be asking ourselves now is that is the further drop in inflation actually telling us what is also happening with regards to the cost of living? Because the reason why many people will be so focused on the inflation figures or the inflation numbers is really to find out if indeed now the cost of living is actually going down and they can do more things than they could previously. And if you ask of the, the lived experiences of the average Ghanaian on the streets, I mean, with regards to utility prices and the cost of goods and items, I think there's a bit of a disconnect between the inflation figures that are going down and actually lived cost of living experience of Ghanaians.
But to be fair, though, something like food inflation has come down. We've seen a couple of other things also come down. Not long ago, we had automobile dealers saying that they are reducing their prices by 15%. So while you say that a couple of things have gone up, some have also come down.
Indeed, and I think that's what makes the whole conversation on the policy choices of government even much more interesting, in the sense that when we are talking about goods and items that have gone down, are we only focusing on the imported items? So, for example, when you talk about vehicle costs that have come down, obviously, if the cedi appreciates, that means that the amount of cedis that ordinarily you would need to purchase or to import a vehicle, you need less of, the cedis to do the import because the cedi has gained much strength. But as an economist, what my focus really on is whether this is actually sustainable and whether this has a long-term impact in terms of economic transformation on our economy. Because if we have the cedi appreciating and imported goods and items actually coming down, but when it comes to the actual production or the real sectors of the economy that we need to drive long-term economic transformation and create the jobs that we need for the youth, then in that case, it seems we are, based on the policy choices of government, we are actually creating a situation where government or Ghana is becoming more dependent on imports rather than the actual economic transformation of production and exports that we need to drive the economic change and create the jobs that we need.
Right. Let's talk about the State of the Nation address, which was delivered by the president last week. I mean, he touched on a number of issues, but he also spoke heavily on the economy. He says that Ghana's economy, in a nutshell, is on a right trajectory. You are amongst one of the, or some of the economists who are disputing that. Why?
So I don't dispute the fact that indeed, I mean, based on the SONA and even data from Ministry of Finance, Bank of Ghana, etc., that looking at some of the main macroeconomic indicators, you know, such as public to debt, GDP ratio, you know, the GDP growth, inflation figures, as you've just said. Indeed, you see that there's stability within our economy. But what I think the State of the Nation address failed to address is that when you listen to His Excellency the President actually do create an impression that the economy that he inherited was so bad, and that in less than, or in 1 year, the economy has been able to turn around, and now based on certain policies that they are going to put in place, that is going to drive the long-term economic transformation that we need. And that is where I actually dispute, you know, these facts. Because
but is that not a fact, though?
That is not a fact, because if you actually take time, I mean, to even examine the President's State of the Nation address, you know, paragraph by paragraph, you take, for example, the GDP growth rate, for example. Indeed, 2024, Ghana recorded a GDP growth rate of 5.7%, coming from, you know, the post-COVID era of 2020, where our growth rate was 0.5%. So you can see that the economy had actually turned around before 2025. We take even inflation from even when you take the President's State of the Nation address, where inflation peaked at somewhere around 54%, but all the way down to less than 25% as at December, you know, 2024. Same with, you know, the public debt to GDP ratio. So you can see that the economy had actually turned the corner when it comes to us coming from, you know, high inflation rates, low GDP growth, among others. So that means that...
Had it turned the corner, or it was turning the corner?
So I would say that it was turning the corner. So meaning that the economy that was inherited by this government or by the president was not an economy that was so bad as the president seems to, you know, say in his State of the Nation address. And indeed, if we look at the State of the Nation address, where the president says, I mean, 2022, for example, was one of the darkest, you know, economic moments within our history. But you ask yourself that indeed in 2022, I mean, that's when Ghana couldn't, you know, pay its debts. You know, we had to request for the domestic debt exchange program, the policy and programs that came into place. But the question that we should be asking ourselves is that if an event occurs in a specific year, does that mean that that event was produced within that year? Or it could be a accumulation of events that had happened prior to that. So if we take, for example, our debt, you know, our debt situation in 2022, where Ghana had, you know, a debt in terms of our public debt stock, I think was somewhere around 53.9 billion. But you look at 2008, where our debt stock was at $8 billion. Fast forward to 2016, where our debt stock was around, I think, $29.2 billion. I'm talking about dollar term. So from 2009 to 2016, I mean, our debt stock increased by 262%. Whilst from 2017 till that 2022, where the president actually says that it was one of our darkest, you know, economic moments, our debt stock had increased in percentage terms by about 85%, meaning that the event that did occur in that specific year, if we, you know, we ignore, you know, the external factors and, you know, other issues that contributed to us getting to where we were at that time, you can see that indeed the high or the unsustainable debt levels we experienced at that time also was not just partly, but it was very much contributed also during the NDC-1, NDC-2, so from 2009 to 2016 era. So if there's an issue in 2022, I mean, we can't say that it was due to just, recklessness, mismanagement, etc. But it was issues that had started or had been contributed to from the NDC government all the way down to the MPP government. But where we need to actually also focus on is that when, our debt levels were unsustainable, what actually did happen? The president, in his State of the Nation address, actually mentions that one of the reasons why our public debt to GDP has reduced quite significantly to about 45% is as a result of fiscal consolidation, negotiations and bilateral agreements. But I mean, we should ask ourselves that in terms of these debt negotiations and agreements, I mean, when did these actually begin, or when did they actually start? You and I are aware that right at the time, we started with this domestic debt exchange program, the IMF program and the debt negotiations started prior to 2025. And one of the main reasons why, some researchers even say that the MPP lost, the reason why they lost power was as a result of these painful programs and policies, such as the domestic debt exchange program. So in a way, this government is also enjoying the fruits of that painful decision that was taken by the previous government. So, which I believe that the State of the Nation address should have also highlighted that and also emphasized on that, and also credit, the previous government of some of the, gains that we've recorded in terms of our reduction in the debt to GDP ratio, in terms of reduction in inflation, among others.
You spoke of DDEP. Now, government can issue domestic bonds, as we all are aware. Is that to say that that should also be attributable to the previous administration, per what you're saying?
I mean, if the fiscal space had not been created in the first place, we wouldn't get to the point where our public debt to GDP ratio, goes down quite significantly. For now, for us to get to the point where we are now saying that we are ready to actually go and borrow from the domestic market. But obviously, I think one thing also that needs to be made clear, that of course, even though, policies and programs were put in place under the previous government, this government had also continued on with it and had also put in place certain measures, such as, some of the expenditure rationalization measures that have also helped us to get to where we are. And I think that has to be made clear. But on Ghana getting ready, to go back on the domestic bond market to borrow, I think it's something that I would say that government needs to tread cautiously. Because indeed, now we have the fiscal space. Our debt to GDP ratio has come down quite significantly. But if you look at, that's why I said sometimes you also have to examine, not only look at the macro level, but also come down to the micro level and look at the numbers. If we take, for example, our revenue target for 2025, when the Finance Minister, Dr. Atufo, read the 2025 budget, the target it had set, the minister had set for Ghana for the first quarter to the third quarter, we were unable to meet that target. Actually, we missed the target by as much as 7.7 billion Ghana cedis. 7.7 billion Ghana cedis, which is very massive. So meaning that we are finding it difficult to meet our revenue targets. Again, if we look at our debt numbers, from May 2025 all the way to November last year, so November 2025, our debt stock has actually been increasing. Our debt stock had increased by more than 30 billion from May 2025 to November 2025. As a matter of fact, even if you look at May to September, our debt stock had increased by 70 billion. So now the question is, if indeed our debt stock is going up and we are unable to meet our revenue targets, I mean, why are we so much in a rush to go to the domestic bond market and borrow? Is it that we just want to be able to finance some of the fanciful promises of the government or what? Or are we trying to, fund key projects that will bring long-term economic transformation?
You're talking about an increment in our debt stock between May to September.
May to
November as well.
Yes.
Where are you getting these figures from?
So these figures are from the Bank of Ghana. You can look at the Bank of Ghana summary statistics data.
Okay.
So from May to September, our debt stock increased. And then from September to November, it went down slightly. But if you look at the entire period of May 2025 to November 2025, I didn't include the December 2025 because the data wasn't available. You can see that there has been a net increase in our nominal debt figures.
How would you rate John Mahama's first year in office when it comes to the economy?
That's a difficult question. I think I will rate the president's first term in office probably at maybe 50%.
50%?
Yes,
why?
I'll raise it. Because, I mean, I would have wished that I would see clear policies that are going to drive the economic transformation that we are all looking out for.
You're not seeing them enough?
I mean, if I ask you that, tell me some of the key policies and programs that have brought these economic transformation, I'm sure you'll find it difficult. I mean, apart from the forex intervention by the Bank of Ghana, which initially the governor of the central bank had said, mentioned that it wasn't true, but later on, after the IMF released their reports, etc., came out to say that indeed, the central bank was intervening in the forex market. I mean, if we take some of their key flagship policies and programs that they said they were going to put in place to create the jobs needed, reduce our import dependence and all that, I haven't seen it yet. If you take the 24-hour economic policy, for example, I was expecting that by now we would have seen clear signs with regards to, for example, probably lower utility, rates and prices for businesses. But I haven't, apart from the fact that the 24-hour policy bill has, the president has signed that and passed, and the president has signed it. I mean, 110 million allocation for the 24-hour economy is very inadequate. I mean, if the coordinator for the 24-hour economic secretariat is saying we need almost about $4 billion to successfully implement the 24-hour economy policy, which if we use an exchange rate of about 12 Ghana cedis, we are looking at close to about 48 billion Ghana cedis, and you allocate 110 million Ghana cedis,
right,
which is less than 1% of what you actually need to successfully implement your flagship policy and program, then, my brother, there's a problem. It's a problem because the youth need jobs.
Right. I mean, you've mentioned that some of the challenges that we confronted, especially in 2022, were years, an accumulation of years of bad decisions that we took. Now you are grading President Mahama 50%.
Yes.
I mean, inflation is down from over 20% to under 4%. The dollar is hovering around 10 to 11%. Still, you are grading him 50%. I want to find out from you, in the 2024 elections, the main contender of President Mahama was Mahmoud Bawumia. Do you think that if he were to be the one in charge right now, things would have been different, better, or worse, you'd say?
So I think, first of all, you talk about these macro numbers. That's why I was saying we need to look beyond the macro numbers. So in terms of jobs, what policies and programs have been put in place to create the jobs? Their flagship policy, 24-hour economy, hasn't really taken off. And as I said, the allocation to that program or policy is hopefully inadequate. If we talk about, the economic transformation, making sure that, our industries are expanding, manufacturing sector expanding, etc., you look at that as well, and you see that the government is so much focused on these gold exports, bringing in the forex we need in order to then intervene in the market to bring the dollar, bring the strength of the dollar down. Now, with regards to the question you just asked me regarding the former vice president, I mean, as at last year, even when the Bank of Ghana had a program abroad, I think in London, one of the key policies and programs they actually praised for, helping us boost our reserves and bring, help our economy was the Gold for Reserves program. And the Gold for Reserves program, I mean, if you look at the records, can be attributed to His Excellency, the former Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So I think that if these policies and programs that are currently in place, and that has helped, boost our reserves. So if you look at our gold reserves, before the domestic gold purchase program, our gold reserves were somewhere around 8.7 tons. As at December 2024, our gold reserve had actually increased to 30.5 tons. I mean, this is a very major policy or program that has boosted our reserves quite significantly.
That means that the foundation, according to what you're saying, the foundation was set in motion for this to happen.
Yes, as a matter of fact.
Does that mean that Mahmoud Bawumia would have also gotten 50% from you then?
So he's not president yet, but yes, even in his absence, if his policies and programs are driving this change, this economic transformation that we are seeing, then I mean, as president and with all the constitutional powers, etc., would even do, I would say that would even do more.
So he would have performed better.
Yeah, he would have performed. Yeah, he would have performed better than the 50%.
How many percent?
And as a matter of fact, if you look at the current policy that was launched, I think this year, no, it hasn't been launched yet. The National Reserve Accelerated Accumulation Policy,
right,
which is more or less a rebranding of the domestic gold purchase program for reserves. I mean, you will notice that the ideas that the former vice president actually put in place are ideas that have actually helped our economy, ideas that have helped with the structural transformation of our economy.
You fail to put a number to it. I don't know why.
No, because you can't put a number to it, but I know that he would have definitely performed better. Probably more than 70%.
More than 70%?
Yes, more than 70%, because I would do those analysis based on his track record as vice president.
Right. Dr. Kwesi Nyame Befi, I want to thank you very much for your time this afternoon. He's an economist and a lecturer at GIMPA. You're still watching The Pulse here on JoyNews. Return from the break with more. Don't go anywhere. You're welcome back. The Civil and Local Government Staff Association of Ghana, CLOGSAG, has this afternoon vehemently rejected the Constitution Review Committee's recommendation for the Controller and Accountant General's Department to be made independent from the Ministry of Finance. The department currently operates as an implementing agency of the Ministry of Finance, executing government accounting functions, among others. CLOGSAG insists it should remain administratively within the ministry rather than be structurally separated into an independent constitutional body. Speaking at a press conference in Accra, Executive Secretary of CLOGSAG, Isaac Addo, argued that the proposal to elevate the department to an independent status could create institutional confusion and weaken fiscal coordination.
We disagree with the proposals to establish the Controller and Accountant General as an independent or hybrid independent constitutional office. The mandate of the Controller and Accountant General Department falls squarely within the mandate and functional oversight responsibilities of the Ministry of Finance. The CAG operates as an implementation agency of the ministry in executing government accounting, ensuring payments control, and performing treasury management functions. As part of the executive machinery responsible for implementing fiscal policy, the CAGD should remain administratively situated within the mandate of the Minister of Finance rather than be structurally separated into an independent constitutional body. Implications of making CAG independent. Elevating the department to an independent status could create institutional confusion, weaken physical coordination, introduce bureaucratic duplication, and complete efficient financial administration. B. Implication of appointment of the CAG by the Council of State. Furthermore, we object the proposal for the Council of State to recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for the appointment of the Controlling Accountant General. The proposal is at variance with our firm principles of leaving departmental appointments to governing councils, who have the necessary institutional memory to select, vet, and appoint on merit basis an appropriate institutional head. Implication of oversight of Parliament over the performance of the Controlling Accountant General's Department. Like all public organizations in Ghana, the proposal for Parliament to exercise oversight performance of the Controlling Accountant General through its relevant committees in accordance of law is welcome. However, the Minister of Finance should remain the bona fide body to exercise ministerial oversight over the activities of the Controlling Accountant General.
That's the Executive Secretary of CLOCSAG, Isaac Bampo Addo. He's also been rejecting the proposal for the Council of State to recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for the appointment of the head of the civil service.
We object to the CRC proposal that the Council of State shall recruit, vet, and make binding nominations to the President for appointment of the head of civil service with the assistance of the Public Services Commission. We recommend removing the special appointment arrangement under Article 193(1) concerning the head of civil service, which requires the President to appoint the head of civil service acting specifically on the advice of the Public Services Commission, and align this appointment with the general framework under Article 195 governing public service appointments. For clarity, Article 195(1) of the Constitution states that subject to the provision of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or to act in an office in the public service shall vest in the President, acting in accordance with the advice of the governing council of the service concerned, given in consultation with the Public Services Commission. If the intent of the constitutional reform is to depoliticize the public services, enhance professionalism, and promote meritocracy in the appointment of a head of civil service, then we propose amendment to the Article 195 for the Constitution that should read as follows. Subject to the provision of this Constitution, the power to appoint persons to hold or act in an office in the public service shall vest in the President, acting in accordance with the binding nominations of the Governing Council of the service concerned, given in consultation with the Public Service Commission.
Dr. Daniel Appiah is joining me this afternoon for a conversation on the back of this. He's a member of the CLOCSAG Review Committee. Grateful for your time this afternoon, Dr. Appiah. You were part of the committee that made these strong oppositions to the Constitution Review's recommendation for the Controller and Accountant General's Department to be made independent from the Ministry of Finance. Why?
To you and then to our viewers. Right. So you are right. I was a secretary to the CLOCSAG CRC Review Committee that looked at the CRC report and then to review it and then to consider whether the recommendations that are contained in the report will help to strengthen the public service in terms of enhancing efficiency, effectiveness, meritocracy, and then improving service delivery for the ordinary Ghanaian. And one of the things that we looked at is the recommendation concerning the Office of the Controller and Accountant General's Department. Now, when you look at the CRC report, they immediately go ahead to give recommendations for the creation of the Controller and Accountant General's Department as an independent constitutional body or a hybrid independent constitutional body. They do not give any reason as to why this step should be taken. But if you look at the methodology that the CRC have indicated in their report, they stated that they adopted a problem-solving methodology for their recommendations. Problem-solving means that you first must state what exactly is the problem that you are seeking to cure, and then you come with the solutions. But if you read the recommendations concerning the Controller and Accountant General's Department, they have not stated any kind of problem for which they have made their recommendations. So the question that first one asks is, what exactly is the problem that they seek to cure by making the Controller and Accountant General's Department independent? Then we look at this 2010 CRC report to see whether something like that was also made in them in order to understand the rationale or the problem. We don't find anything in the CRC report in 2010 that give any kind of problems affecting the CAG, that's the Controller and Accountant General's Department, that occasioned the creation of this department into an independent agency. What one rather finds is that in the 2010 report, they mention a number of organizations in Kenya's constitution that have been created as an independent agency. So that made us to look at Kenya's constitution, which was made in 2010. What is it that they've created in there? And in Kenya's constitution, you will see that they've created an office called the Controller of Budget as an independent constitutional body. And then the rules governing that particular office, almost word for word or sentence for sentence, almost replicated in Ghana's CRC report. I mean, the most recent CRC report. And so that raises the question of, why are we replicating something or almost replicating something from Kenya when we don't know what the problems are? And so if CLOCSA say that they have strong grounds to reject, certainly we agree and then we support, because the first basis is what is the problem? And nobody knows what the problem is. And if we are really trying to create a constitution that will make our constitution better, one should first know what are the problems at the end of the day that one is trying to cure. So that is one.
Is CLOCSA ever going to accept the department being independent if those problems are enumerated to you?
But, well, first is that nobody knows what the problems are. And
that's why I'm saying that if you are made aware... If you are made aware of those problems, would you accept it?
Is to know the problems for one to actually even dialogue. The starting point is to know the problems for one to actually dialogue, for one to discuss whether the problems themselves are really problems, and whether these problems, at the end of the day, whether there are no better solutions to deal with the problem. So that is one. And so I will urge the CRC, if they know the problems or they have problems that they gave to their experts, the experts that they spoke to or they talked to for which they have made their recommendations, they have to make their problems clear. And then the other aspect is that in terms of our public financial management architecture, in 2018, Parliament actually enacted the Fiscal Responsibility Act. And then that was December 2018 when that particular act was enacted. If you read the parliamentary Hansards, if you look at the debates that happened in Parliament, there was almost unanimous agreement or consensus between both the NPP and NDC side that there is a need for Ghana to create an independent fiscal council that will supervise the Ministry of Finance, that will analyze also as to whether the Ministry of Finance and the Minister of Finance are going overboard in terms of the management of our public finances. And so that particular recommendation has been accepted by this current Constitutional Review Committee's report. However, what they reject is that that council should not be created within the Constitution, but it should rather be created through an act of Parliament. The question that raises, which CLOCSA has rejected, is that if you look at the Fiscal Responsibility Act that was enacted in 2018, and then it is the only act that gave authority to Parliament to censure the Minister of Finance and remove that Minister of Finance from office or recommend his removal if that Minister of Finance mismanages our finances beyond a certain threshold.
Right.
But COVID-19 came, and then the same Parliament passed now an act now to suspend the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Are you now proposing that the same Parliament that has suspended this Fiscal Responsibility Act and it has never returned to this country we should give that same parliament the power to create an independent fiscal council. And then when that council now begins to bite and work effectively, then that same parliament will go and pass an act now to once again suspend the council.
Right.
And so there's that consensus that to make to be able to have a more efficient and prudent financial management system, we need an independent fiscal council that has got constitutional backing or is situated within the constitution and will have that authority to actually manage and supervise and monitor the activities of the Ministry of Finance, the Controlling Accountant General's Department, and other public financial institutions. That raises the bar higher than one trying to say that let us make the Controlling Accountant General's Department independent. What exactly does it cure? Nobody knows, apart from one saying that is almost a replication of what is in the Kenyan Constitution in any case.
Right, Dr. Daniel Appiah, thank you very much. He is part of the review committee of ClockSAC.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk something else, because the Environmental Protection Authority has intercepted an additional 1,070 Shanfan machines concealed in separate containers at the Tema port on Tuesday night. The latest seizure comes just weeks after the authority uncovered more than 200 Shanfan machines hidden in 14 shipping containers in a similar operation. According to the EPA, the scale of the latest interception is deeply alarming, particularly as the machines were reportedly destined for mining districts across the country. The authority says it is intensifying surveillance at the ports and tightening controls on the importation of Shanfan machines as part of broader efforts to curb environmental degradation, especially the pollution of major water bodies. The crackdown comes amid the EPA's ongoing pilot initiative to restore polluted rivers. Only weeks ago, the authority deployed ionic nanocopper technology to treat the heavily polluted River Brame in the eastern region at an estimated cost of $200,000 per kilometer. The EPA maintains that Shanfan machines remain a major driver of the destruction of water bodies through illegal and unregulated mining activities. Officials insist the authority will no longer have an oversight of that. The Deputy CEO of the Environmental Protection Authority, Professor Michael Ayanga Adongo, has been providing details on the interception.
While we were there today, 3 more containers were intercepted, and that takes the number well to over 1,200 as we speak. My team is still working on the documentation of the time, verifying national security. But I tell you, a grant is going in there, and we feel that as EPA, we need to intensify our presence at the ports and then ensure that our people are at the front line looking out for these things and not merely relying on tips and intelligence. So this is a wake-up call, and we are all alarmed by it.
Right, and beyond seizures, what preventive measures are you putting in place so that we do not record these incidents again?
Yes, I spoke with CEO yesterday. She instructed that I go to the ports to verify. So since Tuesday, I've been going there every day to do verifications. And one of the instructions was to begin to work to prosecute the importers, because this importation was done in contravention to the ban we issued on the 29th of October 2025 that placed a ban on the fabrication, importation, distribution and sale of small motorized dredging machines, popularly called Shanfan, in Ghana. And this is also in line with our environmental assessment regulation, LI 2504.
Right.
So we believe that we have enough legal basis to prosecute whosoever imported these things in the country. So we are working with the agents, asking them to name the importers, identify them, and we'll let them face the law.
Pakwesi Shandov is the Director of Communications at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and is joining me in the studio for more on that. Pakwesi, We've seen this before. Weeks ago, we saw the EPA conduct another, raid or whatever you'd call it at the same port, and now we're seeing this one. Huge numbers. Where are they coming from, first of all?
Well, so we have begun investigations promptly into the source, because you would recall that somewhere in October last year, I think it was even September last year, the sector minister, Honorable Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, and let's not forget that apart from being the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, he's also currently the Acting Minister for Environment, Science and Technology. EPA falls under that ministry. He was very clear, and the directive was issued to that effect, that there is effective immediately a ban on the importation of champagnes. But the thing about the champagnes is that beyond the importation, there is also domestic expertise that facilitates the production. So across board, the directive was very sweeping, that we were going to deploy men, boots on the ground, to ensure that the domestic production will stop, as well as the ban on the importation. And so if we are seeing this now, logically it presupposes that there is some kind of, if you like, inappropriate transaction ongoing. It is only an investigation that would be able to uncover and unravel that, and that is why we have begun the process accordingly, to be able to establish where exactly it is coming from. And when the investigation is able to unravel that, we'll put the outcome, yes, or the findings out accordingly.
The Deputy CEO of EPA, who I spoke to some few hours ago, did say that this was a tip-off they got from National Security.
Absolutely.
Who owns this?
Well, we would have to first of all commend the National Security for the bravery, and then the oversight responsibility they exercised. To the question of who owns it, I did just say that an investigation will be able to uncover, because you would know. You indicated just a while ago that they were destined for mining districts. That is particularly very problematic, because in the first place, a ban has been placed on the importation. If somebody or any group of people are able to ensure that they come in and they are destined for mining communities in the first place, that certainly is a big problem. Let me put on record that the sector minister has indicated to me that, like I said earlier, an investigation will be conducted to unravel who owns it, where it is coming from, and if there are any sanctions that have to be applied, they would be meted out accordingly.
Will the name of the person or the individuals who own this ever be made public if the investigation establishes that this so-and-so owns it? Because I'm asking this question because people are saying that there are political forces behind this who would rather, this is seized and the authorities will just cover it and say that, we were unable to establish the owners of it, but we've seized it. That's why I'm asking that question.
Not too long ago, if you look at the configuration and architecture of the National Democratic Congress, two leading characters within that particular enterprise. So they're talking about the party's national organizer and the party's third national vice chairman. When it became apparent, or allegations were widely circulated that they were involved in illegal mining activities, their names were mentioned. The point I want to make is that if the government of the day can publicly identify and highlight persons who belong to the ruling party, then whose name cannot be mentioned under the circumstances? And so whoever is involved, whether you belong to any social profile or class, so long as it's an illegality which the sector minister has categorically condemned, the investigations would certainly fish you out, because as the president has been saying himself, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, in this time and in this era, there is no shielding of anybody who is involved in any illegal mining activities whatsoever.
Weeks ago, we saw a similar incident happen at the Tema port. Where are those machines?
It's a matter of national security. Of course, you saw that it's the national security who actually gave the tip-off. So matters of this nature, number one, they are very sensitive, and so due to the sensitivity of the issues, we hardly disclose where they are being housed, because when you begin to give out those pieces of information, you help those who would want to negotiate backdoor, have other intentions to know exactly what to do. For example, if I told you that all of them were being kept at your house, Ken's house, you become a subject of interest right after this particular conversation. And we do not want that, because more often than not, it can obstruct the investigative protocols. But the assurance is that they are currently in good custody, and when the investigations are concluded, we'll be able to know who is behind, where they are, and if there are any appropriate sanctions to be meted accordingly.
I was actually asking about the ones that...
Earlier.
The early ones.
Yes, all of them.
Are they still in the custody of government?
Yes, absolutely. They are in safekeeping. Where exactly they are is what I'm not sure is worth or could be disclosed. I don't think it's...
And the people behind...
national security
the people behind that have also not been identified.
The investigations are ongoing. So, Ken,
Has it not taken too long?
Absolutely not. Let me say something. Let me put on record or attempt to explain the complication or the complexity with trying to fish out the big fish, or the principal instigators and facilitators of illegal mining. It's not as easy as one may assume, all right, because the syndicate is a bit complex. So, for instance, in this particular expose, you may check the records and identify and see that, for example, permit me again to use your name, Ken was the one who was doing the importation. But when you get Ken and then you start digging and digging, you realize that all the while Ken has just been a distraction, all right? And there are actual layers of individuals who are really, really involved. And so anytime you want to unravel these matters, it is not a very simplistic effort.
Okay.
It takes a lot of time, tact, and intelligence. And that is why more often than not, we are not able to promptly mention names. But there's a procedure to do that. And so let's just keep our fingers crossed.
What happens if your investigations conclude and you find out that indeed these were machines that were being sent to Galamsey sites? What happens to those machines?
So, like we did for the water pumps, all right, and indeed for all other earth-moving equipment that we have confiscated or embargoed in one way or the other, all of them become, first of all, exhibits for prosecution. But for those ones that we can repurpose and deploy to other fruitful ventures, we'll do that accordingly. So for these ones like this, I want to believe, some funds, we have already said that we do not need them particularly in our mining communities. If then we are able to establish through the investigations that, look, these things truly were meant for destructive purposes, the action that will be taken will be proportionate to the distraction that the intended distraction that the investigation is able to uncover.
What has NIMOS been up to lately?
Well, 3 major operations have been conducted within the course of this week. I'm sure that in the course of the day, this particular day, we will flesh out the details of those operations. But beyond the routine operations to the Galamsey communities, we had been saying that the consideration and the proposition of NIMOS is to deploy full-scale 24/7 uninterrupted surveillance to all the relevant flashpoints where illegal mining is very prominent. We've been hammering that for a long time, but the good news is that hopefully by the end of this quarter, which of course effectively is the end of this month, we're going to see that full-scale deployment. What that in practical terms means is that the NIMOS personnel will be stationed at all the flashpoints without moving. They wouldn't have to move. They will stay there as, if you like, everyday watchmen who are being paid, because it is becoming the case that when NIMOS goes into an area, they move into any enclave and perform an operation, a swoop whatsoever. By the time they are leaving, you realize that illegal miners will return. And that is because, not to implicate anybody, I'm saying it advisedly, it has become very clear that the local authorities or the local enforcement agencies are not, some of them, I should say, are not complementing the efforts of NIMOS. Because look, if NIMOS goes into a community and then NIMOS is able to execute an operation, the expectation is that the local enforcement outfits there should be able to sustain the momentum and keep the enforcement in order. But sometimes NIMOS goes, before they even return, realize that the thing is escalating. So the 24-hour uninterrupted deployment, full scale, is the way to go. And the sector minister has given the blessing. Honorable Amanko Fibua authorized it. The finance ministry has also made certain promising commitments to that effect. Indeed, the chief executive officer of the Ghana Gold Board, Mr. Sami Gyamfi, has also made certain commitments and assurances to that effect. And so we should see that by the end of the first quarter.
Pakwesi Shandov is the Director of Communications at the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources. Thank you very much. Awula Sewa is with Eco-Conscious Citizens Ghana. Awula, grateful for your time this afternoon. Over 1,000 shanfans seized at the port. What do you make of it? Unfortunately, it appears that we've lost Awula Sewa on the line, but the story we've been bringing you is that more than 1,000 Shanfan machines have been seized at the Tema Port. Authorities are telling us that this was an intelligence-led operation, and the indication they got was that these machines were heading to mining sites in Ghana. We're trying to connect the phone lines with Awula Sewa, who is with eco-conscious citizens, to give us her thoughts. And you just heard Pakwesi Shandov speak to us. He's the Director of Communications at the Lands and Natural Resources Ministry, telling us that investigations are currently ongoing. And according to EP officials, the scale of the latest interception is deeply alarming, particularly as the machines were reportedly destined for mining districts across the country. And the authority says it is intensifying surveillance at the ports and tightening controls on the importation of Shanfan machines as part of broader efforts to curb environmental degradation, especially the pollution of major water bodies. And the crackdown comes amid the EPA's ongoing pilot initiative to restore polluted rivers. Only weeks ago, if you do recall, the authority deployed ionic nanocopper technology to treat the heavily polluted Brim River in the eastern region at an estimated cost of $200,000 per kilometer. Awula Sewa is back on the line, I understand. Unfortunately, we've lost Awula Sewa once again. We'll try and reconnect the lines to speak to her, to pick her thoughts on this disturbing story. In the meantime, though, the Vice Chairman of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC Working Group 1, Professor Nana Ama-Kluche, has called on African leaders to significantly scale up investment in climate science research to inform evidence-based and pragmatic policy making in addressing the escalating climate crisis. According to her, although climate change transcends national boundaries and represents a global systemic risk, several African countries lack the critical data sets to drive effective mitigation and adaptation strategies.
The three-day conference under the theme Methodologies, Metrics and Indicators for Assessing Climate Change Impact and Adaptation brought together leading climate scientists, policymakers and technical experts from over 33 countries. The objective is clear: to harmonize and strengthen global frameworks for measuring climate impact and climate-induced vulnerabilities. Speaking at a media engagement on the significance of the conference, Vice Chair of the IPCC Working Group 1 and the CEO of EPA, Professor Nana Ama-Kluche, lamented the persistent gaps in climate data across parts of Africa.
Climate change is a reality. It's happening. And the rate at which it's happening, it's unprecedented. Scientists in this community are already overwhelmed and still trying every day to understand the changes and the impact it's having on the people, especially the vulnerable communities. And so we all have to be aware, especially the leaders in Africa need to be aware and come up to speed with the changes that are occurring and put measures in place, including updating policies, including investing in the capacity for people or experts in the areas to update their reports and do scientific publications. So all of these publications will now inform discussions we have at COP, the Conference of Parties at the UNFCCC. Some countries do not have information, adequate information in terms of data and scientific reports of the happenings in the area. This affects decisions that we have on the tables.
Meanwhile, Minister responsible for climate change, Isif Useidu, noted that Ghana remains aligned with global climate goals, urging the conference to carefully come up with broad-based recommendations.
The key areas for consideration in this meeting include developing metrics and indicators for measuring adaptation effectiveness, assessing the feasibility and effectiveness of adaptation, identifying enablers and barriers to climate change adaptation, integrating climate adaptation into broader development processes, and also enhancing support for adaptation in developing countries. Ghana is committed to climate action and welcomes the global goal on adaptation framework. We are working to develop indicators to guide our adaptation efforts and enhance support for vulnerable communities.
On his part, co-chair of IPCC Working Group 2, Bart van de Hek, said the Accra conference is a deliberate effort to help the IPCC better understand the real and lived climate impact confronting countries in the global south, including Ghana.
Despite the big efforts there are on reducing global carbon emissions worldwide, we do see that emissions will continue to be there, temperature will continue to grow, and we cannot afford not to adapt. That is our means of survival. And I also think that it is particularly in global south countries where climate impacts really materialize very prominently. And so this is a place where we can be much closer to the heart of the need for adaptation and of the need to get the information that is helping us. And so we have on purpose indeed located the meeting here, but on purpose also invited a lot of experts from Global South to bring their wisdom and experiences to the table and not to only rely on Global North paradigms and resources.
By the close of the conference, participants are expected to consolidate key recommendations to shape the next steps on climate adaptation. Carlos Caloni, JoyNews, Accra.
The Shea tree, also known as the northern cocoa, is a major source of income for thousands of women in northern Ghana. Unsustainable logging, charcoal production, bushfires, and land clearing are, however, destroying Shea parklands in the Upper West region. The loss of these trees is not only threatening livelihoods, it is also worsening climate change impacts by reducing forest cover, increasing heat, and accelerating land degradation. Rafiq Salam has more in today's Climate Evidence.
The Shea tree, one of the endangered tree species of the Northern Savannah Ecological Zone that grows in the wild. Despite its huge economic benefits and potential, its existence is however under threat as it faces extinction from unsustainable logging, charcoal production, bushfires, and land use changes. The main suspects in this criminal act are hunters, farmers, and women. Valentin Danor works as the head of research and learning at non-governmental organization Pronet North. He averred that there is a decline in business in the shea butter industry, and as a result of that, many people have lost their jobs.
Shea gives us a lot of money. Annually, I think about $100 million that the country gets from Shea. It's a global industry that actually is worth about $2.75 billion. And so an industry like that is very important to us.
Acting Upper Regional Director of the Environmental Protection Authority, Jonathan Kierako, equally is not happy about the wanton destruction of the shea and other economic trees.
As they burn the trees, the younger shrubs and those that are not able to survive it, they will die. And at the end of the year, if you see the population of younger trees that probably could have been grown to bigger trees will be dried up, and our women will go and harvest it and go and make their heaps at home. So we take what we want to use it, and minimize the unnecessary felling.
A typical example is here at Peri. Years ago, this facility is owned by Sumbawere shea butter processors. It used to be filled to the rafters with energetic women busy preparing shea butter. The narrative today, however, is different.
We are not getting the nuts like the first time. The first time we can get 2 or 3 bags, but now, because they are cutting the trees, you get 2 or 1.
But because of the cutting of the trees, if we find how to get rain to sow is a problem. That's it. That's affecting. That's part of the climate change.
Sule Musa calls for stringent measures to put a stop to the cutting of shea tree for economic purposes.
If I go and tell someone, don't cut the trees, the person will tell me that I've got the right to tell him to stop cutting. But when we put bad laws on it, and even the police are sitting down, seeing people with Motor King cutting the trees to market, but they don't seize them.
So just like government came up with a regulation to stop the felling of rosewood, we can do the same for Shea. These are economic trees that we want to keep. So we did that for rosewood, and we know that it was a battle. In why here we had attended many meetings where issues of rosewood came up, where people accused chiefs, others accused politicians, but all the same, eventually we were able to curtail the felling of rosewood.
I bumped into these women who are busily manually producing shea butter in an old jaded shed. We were almost at the final stage of producing the shea butter when we arrived. The shed is located just at the entrance of a shea butter mill owned by Said Abdullahi Famana.
Growing
up, the production of shea butter has been the preserve of our mothers. So anybody who is cutting down a shea tree is akin to killing a fellow human who should not be allowed to go scot-free, he said.
Important for JoyNews, Rafik Salam. Wow.
This story is brought to you by JoyNews in partnership with CDK in Ghana, University of Ghana Center for Climate Change and Sustainability Studies, with funding from Claire R4I Opportunities Fund.
And did you know that the corn dough or cassava dough you buy from the market could be exposing you to harmful pathogens? Or the reason? The very individuals responsible for grinding these staple foods are operating in deeply unsanitary conditions. The latest visit by the Joy Clean Ghana campaign to Accra's Central Business District has uncovered alarming hygiene breaches at several milling centers, conditions that pose serious health risk. My colleague Stephen Mensah has more.
And you can see the miller. He's not wearing any apron, protective gear. He is bare-chested. He is sweating. The sweat will even enter the condo. And this is the condo that people will come and buy and go and prepare food. Banku, all the chobas and whatever. This is their source of what? Raw material. And look at the environment. Look at this place where they store the maize in a dirty environment.
Swally. Papa in the animal. Thank you for by Baby Samao.
If you are using so Swally then. So look at the floor. The floor of a mill should be clean and hygienic. But this floor is not clean. Even at the close of day, they do not clean the place. You can see accumulation of what waste over there. And these are what detrimental articles that are not supposed to be here, dresses and whatever. These are some of the addresses. It's not supposed to be at the corner here.
What is supposed to be here?
Nothing should be here.
But then, just as I mentioned earlier, these are some things that play out in almost all these milling stations.
So by our standard, by AMA bylaws, we shouldn't have dressing, we shouldn't hang clothes in a corn mill, according to the bylaws.
And what health risks do these things pose to you and I?
Now, if the dress is dirty, you can imagine, it can contaminate the food products here. Are you getting it? The floor, look at the floor is dirty. The floor has not been. When they are cleaning, they just shift the waste in the corner there. And he himself, he's not wearing any apron. He is sweating. The sweat will enter the food.
I see you don't have a problem with the processor itself.
No, there's no problem here. But he himself and the environment should be clean. Look at this place.
So you're not concerned about the environment?
The environment, even the machine should be clean, but the machine doesn't have any problem.
Right, let's bring in a food scientist, Dr. Ekpe Anyima Aka. He is a lecturer at the Faculty of Health, Allied Sciences and Home Economics Education at the University of Education, Winneba. Grateful for your time this afternoon. If you look at those unsanitary conditions there, what does that tell you? Hello, Dr. Aka. We're still trying to connect the phone lines with Dr. Aka there, who is a food scientist. And what you're seeing on your screen is the unsanitary milling centers in Accra, which is raising public health concerns. You're seeing some corn doughs and other stuff that are ready to be mailed there. And the health inspectors went to the place, were clearly unhappy with what they saw, and they say they have sanctioned the corn miller there. That's the shirtless man who is mailing the corn and other, food stuff that will be sent to our markets, will be ready on our plates for consumption. Dr. Aka, welcome to the program. As a food scientist, does it come to you as a surprise that a corn dough or cassava dough that people buy from the market could be exposing them to harmful pathogens? You've been seeing on your screen how indiscriminately it is being kept.
Thank you very much for having me. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Okay, great. So this is very crucial because I want to thank JoyNews for uncovering this, or at least highlighting it to the public or stakeholders to take effective action on this. It is not surprising. It has been going on, and consumers alike have taken it for granted. But the serious
Hello, Dr. Aka, do I have you? Unfortunately, the lines are not helping us this afternoon. Dr. Aka is a food scientist there. We will try and reconnect with him again. The calls return shortly after this break.
Protective gear.
Waking up to fresh forest air, wildlife just a few steps away, and breakfast served in the heart of nature. This March, Joy FM is inviting you to escape the city properly. Friday the 20th and Saturday the 21st of March, we're taking you on the Joy FM Safari Experience 2026, a 2-day luxury adventure through Aqua Safari and Safari Valley. Picture this. We head to Aqua Safari, Lakeside Branch, Island Boat Rides, Segway Adventures, and just when you think it can't get better, we head to Safari Valley for pure relaxation and an evening bonfire and fun luxury cabins talents tucked away into nature. Then we rise early for a sunrise hike along the Kwiapim Ridge. Breathtaking views, golden light, and unforgettable moments. Guided wildlife encounters. This is not just a trip, it's nature, comfort, adventure. Curated the Joy FM way. Joy FM Safari Experience 2026, 20th and 21st of March. Limited spaces, premium experience. Single 5,000 CDs, double 8,000 CDs. Call or WhatsApp Slevin on 053 100 3813 to book your slot. Be part of this unforgettable escape, because sometimes the best way to reset is to get lost in nature in style.
How may I help you today?
We'd like to open a bank account.
Sign here, sign here, sign here, and here. And now you draw direction to your house. I need your thumbprint. And I'll need your birth certificate too. No, I need the original.
A lot has changed since you bank like this. So have we. We've made it easier than ever to open an account online and bank on the go through our mobile app, online banking, and more. EcoBank, a better way to bank your way.
Sign here, and here.
EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
It's time to put the spotlight on indigenous Ghanaian businesses, homegrown innovations, products, and services. Is your product produced and made right here in Ghana? Then brace yourself for an exciting sales and music festival dubbed Ghana Fest 2026, the biggest sales and exhibition bazaar in March. To register as a business or vendor, call 053 100 3813 or 024 445 3929. Limited slots available. This event is powered by Joy Prime and Joy FM with support from JoyNews and Hits FM. Ghana Fest 2026. Buy Ghana, sell Ghana, celebrate Ghana.
Love 99.5 FM presents the 7th edition of the Love FM Primary Schools Quiz. This is where brilliance meets challenge as talented pupils from schools across the region go head to head, testing their knowledge in mathematics, English, science, and current affairs. It's more than just questions and answers. It's a celebration of learning, courage, and excellence. Watch as young leaders step onto the stage, confident, focused, and ready to make their mark. The Love FM Primary Schools Quiz will be live on TV, Joy Prime and Joy Learning, and on your favorite radio station, Love 99.5 FM. The Love FM Primary Schools Quiz, an avenue for kids to learn and have fun.
You're welcome back to the polls. Let's take you back to our earlier story where the latest visit by the Joy Clean Ghana campaign to Accra's Central Business District has uncovered alarming hygiene breaches at several milling centers, conditions that pose serious public health risk, as you can see on your screen. And let's speak to food scientist Dr. Ekpo Anyima Aka. He's a lecturer at the Faculty of Health, Allied Sciences, and Home Economics Education at the University of Education, Winneba. Thank you very much for your time. What do you make of those unsanitary conditions there? Hello, Dr. Aka, can you hear me? Well, unfortunately, we've lost Dr. Aka on the line. And as you are aware, it's lunchtime, and many of us may be enjoying a bowl of fufu, konkonte, or mutu, or tiozafi with well-prepared goat meat in Katenkwan or Abenkwan at chop bars, bush canteens, and other eateries across the country. But there's a growing concern about the future supply for goat meat. The ECOWAS Regional Animal Health Center says about 157 million goats and 110 million sheep across West Africa, including Ghana, are at risk from a highly contagious viral disease in the West African sub-region. And as authorities say, the disease will require a massive vaccination campaign across the region. The following report has more.
Your favorite goat or sheep meat served with fufu, kokonte, omuto, and other popular delicacies in Ghana could soon come under pressure. ECOWAS is raising concern about the outbreak and spread of peste petit ruminant, a highly contagious viral disease popularly known as goat or sheep plague. The regional body says more than 150 million goats and 110 million sheep across Ghana and other West African countries are at risk, with fatality rates among infected animals reaching as high as 90%. Simon Kihu is a representative of World Organization of Animal Health at ECOWAS.
We need to confront peste petit ruminant, a disease that may be invisible to the global headlines, yet it's very visible and devastating in our rural communities. PPL silently erodes food security, income, and resilience. In the Sahel and the coastal zones, small ruminants are primary entry point for the livestock economy, The EU-funded Pan-African PPL eradication program, coordinated by AU-AIBA, implemented by OA, AU-PANVAC, and FAO, represents a transformative partnership with the significant resources already mobilized and substantial second phase envisaged. This initiative addresses critical gaps in epidemiological intelligence, vaccination coverage, regional coordination. It enables us to identify viral reservoirs, map transmission corridors, analyze cross-border livestock movements that sustain viral presence. In essence, what we call PPL episystems. Veterinary professionals have been trained and digital tools have introduced to enable real-time monitoring of campaigns. To date, hundreds of millions of animals have been vaccinated across the participating countries.
The good news is that the disease is not zoonotic, meaning it cannot be transmitted to humans. However, experts at ECOWAS are warning it could severely disrupt livestock supply across the region, potentially driving up the price of goat meat and threatening farmers' incomes. They say a coordinated mass vaccination campaign is now being rolled out across West Africa to contain the spread of the disease and protect livestock populations. Dr. Emmanuel Kujo is Ghana's Chief Veterinary Officer.
Livestock production remains a cornerstone of economic stability and rural development within ECOWAS member states. Mass vaccination campaigns are among the most effective tools we have to control and, where feasible, eradicate priority transboundary animal diseases. This workshop is therefore both timely and strategic.
Mavis Kabukos reports for JoyNews.
Well, let's try Dr. Enuma Aka once again for more on this. Doc, I was asking you about the unsanitary ways in which corn mills and other foodstuff are prepared for people to eat. When you looked at that particular campaign by JoyNews, where even the place that those things are milled are very, very dirty, what do you make of it?
Thank you very much. Please, can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity. I want to commend Joy for this campaign, for highlighting this and bringing this sensitive issue to public awareness, because it has enormous public health implications. The first is that, look, especially for vulnerable children, babies who take ready-to-eat foods that are prepared from some of these milled products, pregnant women who eat, and even elderly people who take pepper and other spices that have been milled through these mills and put them directly into their food. It is a dangerous and a critical public health menace.
And banku, other foodstuff, the favorite of many Ghanaians. What diseases can people contract if they consume such food, looking at the situations in which they are prepared?
Thank you very much. You see, before I answer this question, let me talk about the pathways. First of all, two critical pathways. There are others, but the first and most important is spore-mediated contamination. If food products, the mills serve as a point where they aggregate a lot of these pathogens and distribute them en masse, because various sources of food are brought there and various sources of food are produced out of the milled product. And so they are able to persist. If you treat them very well, you will be able to remove some of these pathogens, okay? You kill the pathogens, but the critical ones are the spores that stays inside the food product. And the second is the toxins, which cannot be removed mostly by heat. So these two are the very important critical points that have to be managed. So we have salmonella-related diseases. That is to answer your question directly. Salmonella-related diseases.
Right.
Bacillus, serious-related diseases. We also have others as well. And these are generally the typhoid, non-typhoid related diseases. Then we have the diarrheal diseases. But the hidden one, which is mostly ignored, is the chronic diseases that occur. You see, for infants, the acute exposure to some of these toxicants and pathogens can create acute diarrhea and other foodborne-related diseases. But in the long term, some of these toxins, if allowed, can create chronic diseases. For example, aflatoxin and related toxins can persist in the food even after being treated and are associated with carcinoma.
Right. Dr. Ekpo Enyima Aka is a food scientist. Thank you very much for your time this evening. The African School of Governance, a Pan-African institution based in Rwanda, has reaffirmed its commitment to training leaders dedicated to public service across all levels of society. The school, which seeks to foster a strong network of value-driven African professionals and promote collaboration across the continent, has positioned itself as a hub for transformative leadership training. Speaking at a press briefing in Accra, the president of the institution, Francis Gattari, underscored the need to re-examine Africa's history as a foundation for rebuilding confidence in individuals and strengthening leadership capacity.
Curriculum we have prepared for them is hands-on. It starts with understanding Africa, because we believe that today the African leader, the average African leader at various levels doesn't understand Africa. They don't understand African history. They don't understand African political economy. Even when they understand it, it's misunderstood. And so we start by re-examining African history to build the confidence of the individual. Because today, many leaders at various levels have lost self-confidence. They have lost self-confidence. They think that as an African professional, you are not as competent as any other outside Africa. Even when you have the qualifications and skills, they believe Many think that as an African person, you are naturally inferior. But why? And so we start by rebuilding the African leaders' self-confidence by understanding their history, to understand where they have come from, to understand those who have been there before them, the forefathers that built our continent, so that you regain your confidence.
21 inmates at Tamale Prison have been granted bail following a Justice for All program sitting in Tamale in the northern region. Justice Angelina Mensah Homia, a justice of the Appeal Court, disclosed this after the court sitting and said 4 bail applications were refused while 3 were struck out.
The Justice for All program launched in 2007 is a government-led initiative that holds special in-person court sittings to tackle prison overcrowding. The court was in Tamale for its sitting, with similar sittings expected to be held in Ho, Sekondi, and Sunyani. Speaking after the sitting, an appeals court judge, Her Ladyship Justice Angelina Mensah Homia, said 2 persons were discharged unconditionally and gave a further breakdown of the day's activities.
In all, 37 applications were filed. 2 were discharged unconditionally. 4 persons changed their plea. They had been charged with murder, but they pleaded guilty to manslaughter, and they were accordingly convicted. 21 were granted bail. 4 bail applications were refused for various reasons. 3 applications were struck out, and then 3 referred for psychiatric treatment. So they will be sent for psychiatric assessments, and depending on the outcome, the courts would take the next steps and make the necessary orders.
She said the program has seen a great progress since its inception under Her Ladyship Georgina Todura Wood.
The first Justice for All program was held under the leadership of Chief Justice Georgina Wood in 2007. We have progressively improved since then. At the time of inception of the program in 2007, the total prisoner population was 13,800, out of which 4,218 were remands or pre-trial inmates, constituting 30.57% of the total prisoner population. This high remand prisoner population contributed substantially to the then acute overcrowding in the prisons, which stood at 72.4%. It is refreshing and my pleasure to announce to you that as of yesterday, 2nd March 2026, data from the Ghana Prison Service Records Unit indicates that the total inmate population is 13,620, which comprises 1,745 remands, that's 12.81%, and 11,875 convicts, that is 87.19%. Over the past 19 years, the program has impacted on the remand population in the prisons, bringing it down from 30.57 in 2007 to the current 12.84%.
That's it for the Pulse this evening. LTS is up next. My name is Kenneth. Jesse, the news team returns at 7 p.m. with News Prime. Have a good evening.